Did the Pentagon ever confirm non-human craft? Or did headlines outrun the documents? In this video, we'll show you the one memo line everyone quotes.
Open it.
And what it actually says.
Read the line.
We'll slow the famous Navy clip to expose parallax and stack claims against records.
From wide net to hard
Budget
standards.
by budget, case by case. If it breaks under evidence, it's out. If it holds, it stays. No hype, just what survives scrutiny. This is America Unexplained. The Pentagon's UAP files. Before we chase lights in the sky, we start with paper. What was authorized? Who did the work? And what the records actually say? AAWSAP was the big tent experiment. Wide scope, contractor research, and a hunt for patterns across strange reports. Useful? At times. Conclusive? Rarely. But it left a trail. Statements,
Start with the record.
budgets, deliverables.
Then add context.
AATIP followed as the story everyone thinks they know. Smaller, narrower, less myth, more memo.
Scope
We
was
will
wide.
show what it really covered and what it didn't. Then came the task forces and
Patterns
today's
that then had to
AARO,
emerge.
a mandate to sort claims into categories. Explained, insufficient, unresolved, and to close cases with data,
Useful at
not
times.
vibes. Most entries fold under better
Introduction.
information. A few
Sort.
refuse. Those few
Triage.
matter. In this prologue, we
Model.
set our rules. No headline outranks the document. No clip outruns its censor limits. Every claim stands
Most
next to
fold
its
under better
source.
info.
If something breaks, it's out. If it holds after the strongest conventional
reviews.
explanations,
Those
it
matter.
stays on the board. We are not here to
Censor
promise
limits
answers. We are here to earn them. Open the folders, read the lines, see what survives, and only then decide what the story really is.
Environment matters.
Tap subscribe and hype it with a like. I'll take notes, you take the bell.
If this helped you think straighter about UAPs, then hype the video if you can.
Chapter 1. A WSAP, the Big Tent Approach.
Start with the charter.
Start with the charter, not the rumor. AAWSAP was built to be wide on purpose. Collect aviation anomalies, catalog sensor oddities, compare
the
human
rumor.
factor reports, and commission
Aviation,
contractor studies that
census,
might
human
stitch
report.
patterns
Big
across
net,
all of it.
bigger noise floor.
Big net, bigger noise floor. What did that look like in practice? Field investigations, literature surveys, databases of sighting narratives, and technical notes on sensors and atmospherics. Some outputs were rough or speculative. Some were useful building blocks. All of them left tracks, statements, budget
Trail
lines,
matters.
delivery memos. That paper trail matters more than any single headline. The core friction was data quality. Reports often arrived late, partial,
Fieldwork
or stripped
first.
of raw telemetry. Sensors disagreed,
Surveys and
timestamps
databases.
drifted, geometry got misread. Memory is a lens, not a camera. So AAWSAP
Late, partial,
adopted triage. Eliminate the mundane first. Balloons, drones,
Sensors don't agree.
aircraft, stars,
Moses.
flares, software
Balloons.
artifacts. Then push the
Drones.
remainder through stricter tests.
Stars.
Two truths emerged.
Artifacts.
First, most incidents
Then model
bent
the
toward
rest.
conventional causes once range, parallax, wind profiles, or instrument behavior were modeled. Second, a smaller remainder resisted closure, usually because the data was too thin to decide, not because the event was extraordinary. Unresolved didn't mean unearthly. It often meant underspecified. Still, the program learned. Categories were defined before analysis to prevent moving goalposts. Sensor states and environmental context were logged whenever possible. Investigators separated narrative from measurement and flagged uncertainty instead of burying it. When a case hinged on a single ambiguous frame or an uncalibrated instrument, it was labeled as such. Useful humility in a noisy domain. AAWSAP's broad scope made it a lightning rod. The upside, cross-domain awareness, and a long view of recurring failure modes. The downside, uneven outputs and the perception that the net was too wide to be surgical. Yet that wide phase laid the groundwork. The taxonomies, the intake checklists, the close call library, that later, narrower efforts would rely on. If you want one honest takeaway, it's this. The extraordinary claim rarely survived ordinary rigor. And when it did, it survived because the data was scarce, not because the physics was shocking. That's not a letdown. It's a map for doing the next part better.
We cataloged everything from balloons to blunders, and this binder ate my afternoon. Next chapter, let's see what actually made the cut.
Chapter 2, AATIP, Myth versus Mandate. AATIP became a legend, a secret UFO office with sweeping powers. The record is smaller and sharper. AATIP focused on defense-relevant anomalies, things that could be misidentified tech, sensor artifacts, or truly unknowns, with the operator's safety as the first question. What AATIP actually did: analyze select incidents, tighten intake, brief decision-makers, and translate technical uncertainty into operational risk. What it did not do: run a crash retrieval empire, spend without limit, or chase every rumor on Earth. In plain terms, this was a narrow lane with specific tasks and a finite budget. Why the myth grew. The 2017 moment fused declassified clips, big personalities, and headlines into one story. But process, not personality, closes cases. Start with the instrument. IR bloom, gimbal roll, range error, tracking reacquisition, wind and sea state, pilot perspective. When those are modeled, impossible accelerations often flatten into ordinary motion seen through a moving keyhole. Budgets and scope matter. AATIP prioritized cases near fleets and training ranges, dense airspace where confusion becomes danger. When metadata was rich, environment, kinematics, sensor state, confidence rose and incidents resolved. When metadata was thin,
Evidence
labels
closing.
stayed conservative.
More light.
Insufficient,
Still shadows.
not extraordinary. How AATIP differs from AAWSAP. The funnel narrowed. Less big tent collection, more case hygiene. Categories hardened. Claims had to be testable. Documentation standards improved. The work shifted from cataloging mysteries to auditing measurements. Practical rule of thumb. Disagree with a headline only after you've rebuilt the sensor and geometry. If kinematics, optics, and context survive the strongest conventional checks, then the case remains on the board. If not, you have your answer, even if it's not cinematic.
Myth, mandate, Meatloaf Monday? Wrong file. Next, what the Navy clips really show.
Chapter 3, 2017 and the Navy clips. The public story detonated in 2017. Three Navy videos
sharper.
became the cultural shorthand for everything unidentified.
Operator risk first.
But a clip is not a conclusion. It's an instrument's perspective with all its quirks attached. First, what you're looking at. Infrared imagery with auto-tracking logic. Glare that blooms around hot targets. And zoom modes that change apparent size and motion. Camera gimbals rotate, the jet maneuvers, the horizon tilts. Your brain tries to stabilize the world and misreads geometry. Parallax is the quiet saboteur. When your platform is moving fast and the line of sight is shallow, distant objects can seem to dart sideways or accelerate without any real change in their own motion. Add wind shear, sea clutter, and tracking handoffs, and impossible turns begin to look like ordinary kinematics seen through a narrow keyhole. The famous frames, apparent rotation, abrupt slide, vanishing acceleration, each have conventional hypotheses: gimbal roll, sensor glare, range misestimation, and tracking logic reacquisition. None of these explanations are glamorous. They're also testable. When analysts model the sensor, the airframe, and the environment together, much of the magic drains away. This doesn't mean every clip is solved to everyone's satisfaction. It means the burden of proof sits with physics before it sits with folklore. If a claim survives the strongest conventional checks, optics, geometry, wind, instrument behavior, then it deserves the label Unresolved. Not extraordinary, not yet,
At 12.6
just
seconds, the object is at
unresolved.
543 meters altitude.
The lesson
bearing
isn't to
47
scoff,
degrees.
it's to
Lateral
measure.
acceleration stays under.
A slowed frame plus the right model tells you more than 1,000 dramatic narrations. And where the modeling ends, the label should be honest. Insufficient data. That honesty protects the truly strange from being diluted by the merely misunderstood.
Enhance. Enhance. Oh, that's my own reflection. Okay, real analysis next.
Chapter 4. AATIP-AARO. The handoff from the UAP task force to AARO changed two things: scale and standards. The goal was no longer to collect curiosities. It was to resolve them systematically and report out with defensible categories. Start with the mandate. AARO is built to receive, triage, analyze, and close cases across services. That means common intake, shared tooling, and a classification scheme that doesn't drift with the news cycle. Each report is a packet: time, location, platform, sensor state, environment, kinematics, and any corroboration. No packet, no confidence. Triage is ruthless by design. Step 1. Is there enough data to attempt a solution? If critical fields or raw telemetry are missing, the label trends toward insufficient. That isn't a dodge. It is a guardrail against inventing certainty. Step 2. Conventional hypotheses first. Balloons, drones, aircraft, astronomical, atmospheric, and instrument behavior. Each hypothesis must be modeled against the sensor and geometry actually in play. Step 3. If a conventional model fits the observations with high likelihood, the case is explained. If it doesn't, and the data is still decent, the case sits in unresolved, pending new evidence. Methods matter more than headlines. AARO's workflow forces analysts to rebuild the scene. Platform motion, line of sight, range constraints, weather, then the instrument. Gimbal limits, optics, IR bloom, processing. Then the target hypotheses. A pretty video is not a measurement. A measurement is the video plus the model that produced the video's distortions. Data pipelines matured as well. Reports funnel from operators through standardized forms. Sensor dumps are requested when retention allows. Cross-service databases reduce duplicate sightings. And provenance is tracked so an anecdote doesn't masquerade as a data set. Confidence levels attach to both inputs and outputs, because low quality in should never yield high certainty out. Transparency rose, but not without limits. Security classification protects sources and methods. Privacy rules protect crews, and export-controlled tech cannot be reverse documented in public. The compromise is summary reporting. Show the categories, the trends, and representative resolutions, without burning what must stay protected. It's imperfect, but it is more light than before. Two warnings survive every review. First, selection bias. Spectacular clips are overrepresented in public, while the mundane resolutions stack up quietly. Second, survivorship bias. Unresolved often means unmeasured, not unearthly. Treat the labels as waypoints, not trophies. So what does AARO actually change? It makes the process legible. It pushes the field toward testable claims, reproducible modeling, and honest uncertainty. It rewards preserving raw data. It penalizes stories that outrun their censors. And by closing most cases with conventional causes, it protects the truly odd from being drowned in the merely misunderstood. If there is a needle in this haystack, this is how you avoid mistaking straw for steel. Standardize the hay, magnetize the search, and publish the criteria, not the guesses.
Statistics are surprisingly slippery. Shuffle, deep breath. Okay, what's actually explained and what isn't?
Chapter 5. What's explained and what isn't? Here is the scoreboard, not the rumor board. Most reports resolve when the basics are modeled: range, geometry, instrument behavior, and context. The remainder tends to split between insufficient and a much smaller unresolved. Labels are about evidence quality, not wishful thinking. Explained, most often. Balloons and lighter than air. Drift patterns match wind profiles. Apparent hover is relative motion. Drones and aircraft. Small RCS. Odd lighting. Non-standard angles of approach. IR signatures flare and fade. Astronomical and atmospheric. Venus, stars, meteors. Temperature inversions. Mirage effects and ducting. Sensor and processing artifacts. IR bloom. Gimbal roll. Glare. Frame rate aliasing. Tracking handoffs. Compression. Operational context. Training ordnance. Decoys. Corner reflectors. Known test assets. Insufficient.
Still no data
Reports missing raw telemetry, stable timestamps, or corroboration. A single ambiguous frame can't carry an extraordinary claim. Witness narratives without instrument data. Memory is a valuable lead, not a measurement. Partial data sets where key parameters, the range, the platform motion, the sensor state, are unknowable after the fact. Unresolved, the smallest pile. Cases with enough data to rule out common models, yet not enough to identify a mundane cause cleanly. They are rare because rare plus well-measured is rare by design. These are not proof of exotic craft. They are candidates for further collection. The correct response is to improve sensors and retention, not to inflate the label. Why this distribution matters? It keeps the field honest by preventing the dramatic few from defining the many. It shows where better collection changes outcomes. Calibrated sensors, synchronized clocks, multi-platform corroboration, and preserved raw data shrink the insufficient heap and push borderline cases to resolution. It also protects genuine anomalies from being diluted by modeling errors and narrative drift. If you're looking for wonder, here it is. Clarity earned the hard way. When a case remains on the board after optics, kinematics, environment, and instrument behavior have all been worked through, that survival is meaningful. But the label is still unresolved until the evidence clears a conventional path. The habit we keep is simple. Measure first, narrate second. Let the model lead the story, not the other way around.
Data quality feels like this. Let's see what the 2025 hearings actually changed.
Chapter 6. The 2025 hearings. What actually changed? Hearings promise sunlight. What they deliver varies. In 2025, committees pressed for clarity, data access, whistleblower claims, classification boundaries, and the role of AARO. The headline question was simple: did transparency increase, and did the evidence base improve? What improved? Reporting channels, standardized forms, and clearer guidance reduced lost reports and inconsistent fields. Cross-service coordination. More units knew where to send data. Fewer cases died in email limbo. Method disclosures. Summaries of how cases get resolved. What explained, insufficient, and unresolved actually mean became easier to cite and to critique. Commitments to retention. Stronger emphasis on preserving raw sensor data, synchronized clocks, and corroboration from multiple platforms. What stayed constrained? Sources and methods. Classification still masks sensitive sensors, tactics, and capabilities. That's not evasion. It's the price of using military instruments in public debates. Anecdote versus archive. Dramatic testimonies often lacked the underlying packets, timestamps, ranges, sensor states, needed to move a case out of insufficient. Expectations. Televised friction can imply mystery, where the paperwork simply says incomplete. Hearings are not labs, they are spotlights. Claims versus AARO positions. Where claims presented specifics with data, AARO could engage, and in many cases, conventional models fit. Where claims were sweeping or data poor, AARO's answer remained procedural. Collect better, preserve better, model better. Not satisfying TV, but necessary science. What changed for researchers and the public? Clearer lanes for FOIA and public summaries. More legible categories, example resolutions, and trend overviews. Better target for advocacy. Instead of arguing over headlines, pressure can focus on data retention policies, declassification review timelines, and releasing representative case studies with scrubbable metadata. The bottom line: more light, still many shadows. Hearings sharpened the map, where process works, where it jams, and where policy needs teeth. They did not crown new truths. They tightened the rules of evidence. That is progress if you intend to do the next part right.
Oops. Well, onwards. If this is the sunlight, what remains after the glare?
Chapter 7. What remains and what's next? If the extraordinary is anywhere, it's inside better data, not bigger rhetoric. What remains is a short list, cases that stayed on the board after optics, geometry, environment, and instrument behavior were all worked through and still failed to land on a mundane cause. Unresolved doesn't mean exotic. It means the conventional path isn't yet proven. What actually advances the field? Preservation. Keep raw sensor streams, not just compressed clips. Record sensor states and platform motion alongside the video. Synchronization. Lock clocks across platforms. Without time, multi-sensor fusion is guesswork. Corroboration. Favor cases with two or more independent modalities. IR plus radar. Optical plus ESM, so models have anchors. Openness with teeth. Publish representative case studies with scrubbed metadata. Describe methods clearly enough that outsiders can replicate the modeling.
We tell crews what that
Training
UFO
the
was by
human
next
sensor.
watch, so the next report
Give crews
comes in
fast,
cleaner.
honest
Reports are
feedback
leads,
loops.
not verdicts.
What that
story tells us
impossible
where to move
motion
next.
turned out to be,
Anecdotes see
so
the
future
archive.
reports
We
arrive
follow the
cleaner.
data. We don't let
What
them
to
get the end
stop
of the story.
doing. Treating anecdotes as archives. Stories guide searches, they don't settle them. Confusing classification with conspiracy. Some data is sensitive because the sensor is sensitive. Rewarding virality over verifiability. A dramatic clip without context is a trailer, not an analysis. What to start building? Standard intake kits for civilian and military operators. Checklists that capture range, geometry, and sensor state by default. Small, shareable simulators that let anyone test how instruments transform motion and light into illusions. A living taxonomy that evolves slowly, not with each headline, but with new, reproducible methods. The outcome we should want is simple. Fewer insufficient, faster conventional resolutions, and a rarer but clearer set of genuinely stubborn cases. If anything extraordinary is real, this is the path that keeps it from being buried by noise. We don't need more heat. We need more light and cleaner lenses.
More light, and maybe a better bulb. One last page, then we'll see where this story really ends.
If this case didn't fry your circuits completely, hit like before my hoof wears out.
Now it's your turn. Leave your thoughts in the comments so we can pin them up next time.
We opened the files and followed the work. AAWSAP to AATIP to AARO. And the pattern was clear. Most cases bent toward ordinary causes when the instruments were understood. A few did not, and they remain on the board, unresolved, not exalted. That is not a disappointment. It is a direction. Extraordinary claims don't need louder stories. They need cleaner measurements. If this series showed anything, it's that better collection changes outcomes. Raw data preserved, clocks aligned, geometry modeled, sensors characterized. With that discipline, confusion shrinks, and what survives becomes meaningful. Thank you for giving rigor a chance in a topic that rarely rewards it. If you contributed reports, analysis, or hard questions, you made the work better. If you came for wonder and stayed for method, you're the reason this kind of film can exist. Everything we cited is listed below the video: program charters, public summaries, and methods. Read them, challenge them,
Thank you.
reproduce
If you came
them.
for wonder and
The
stayed
point
for
is not
method.
to end debate, but
These
to end
moments,
guesswork.
screens paused,
So,
notes half
after the
written,
headlines and the
minds
hype,
turning over the
what
evidence
truth
are
still
why we make
holds
this
in the
work.
light?
Your
Only what the
curiosity
records
carries you
earn.
forward. Thanks
This
for
has been
watching.
America
Everything
Unexplained, the Pentagon's UAP files. Thanks for watching.